Hi, how are you? That's not pretty person.
Good afternoon. Welcome to our Khatcherian Museum. My name is Hrair Khatcherian, and we're very honored to have a special event today. Especially today is April, the month of commemoration of April 24th. I'm going to introduce to you someone who's helping me out at the museum as I'm getting older, so I need the next generation to take over. I'm going to introduce Hrair Khatcherian. She's been helping me out at the museum for the last 6 months. Hopefully she'll take over and become Maggie number 1 and Ivy number 2. Hrair is going to introduce you. We have a special guest all the way from Bakersfield, a very young lady. Her name is Lauren Bettel. I met her 2 years ago. She contacted me. She wanted to get in touch with our well-known international Libyan, who was 103 years old. And I won't give any further Hrair, she can introduce her. And we'll be friends, and I want you to know who this girl is, Lauren Bettel is, and what she's done. So with no further ado, I will introduce Hrair, and then Hrair will introduce Rupert, who will be giving a presentation of Hawks, our presenter. Thank you, Hrair.
Good evening, Barakses. My name is Hrair Khatcherian, and I am a volunteer of the Ararat Khatcherian Museum. As an educator, I strive to empower the youth to recognize justice and to take action to protect and benefit those who need support. This evening's first presenter is someone who fits that very description. Miss Lauren Bettel is only a 9th grader at Centennial High School in Bakersfield, California, yet she has accomplished so much already. Lauren and her mother today have come to us all the way from Bakersfield, which speaks so highly of her support, passion, and dedication toward the Armenian cause, and especially for true history. Lauren worked tirelessly on her project since 2015 for National History Day, with support and guidance from her coach, Ms. Heidi Saburu, who recently was honored and received the Armenian Genocide Education Award from the Armenian National Committee of America, Western Regions Education Committee. And for those of you who don't know, National History Day is what I like to call the science fair for history. So it's just a really large competition with so many students that compete in historical topics. So in the category of performance, Lauren presented her project, Genocide Denied, the Violent Encounter of 1915. She competed among other students and won first place at the county level, then went on to win first place at the California State competition. She then advanced to the national level competition in Washington, D.C., where she competed against 100 other students from around the world. Her confidence, stellar performance, and well-researched presentation advanced her through the finals and earned her a spot in the top 10 for performance in the nation. Her hard work and extensive research can be seen from her 42-page annotated bibliography, which contains a year's worth of research from primary and secondary resources. She even made trips to the Ararat Khatcherian Museum and engaged in several educational conversations with Maggie and also with the elderly at the Ararat home. Without further ado, I would like to present to you Ms. Lauren Bettel, Genocide Denied, the Violent Encounter of 1915.
Welcome to the Armenian Genocide Museum. My name is Maggie, and I'll be your tour guide today. Who are the Armenians? They are an ancient people who existed since before the 1st century BC. Armenia is when Minority Armenians revolted against the Sultan and fought for change, and he ordered his officials to slaughter them. This was known as the Hamidian Massacre. The Sultan was later nicknamed the Bloody Sultan because he left the Euphrates River red with blood. Soon after, in 1910, the Young Turks overthrew the Sultan and came into power. The three pashas, Enver, Jamal, and Talat, were their new leaders. Do you know what's happening in this country? The Balkans have been sieged by the Russians. The Armenian infidels are collaborating with them. They have exchanged arms to our enemies and betrayed our trust. We must do something about this and keep what little land we have left. The Christian infidels are trying to create their own nation on our land. The Ottoman Empire should be cleaned of the Armenians. We will kill them with both sword and starvation. Don't you all want a racially pure country? We will relocate them to their door. It is decided. It is the program. As Talat Pasha was finalizing his plans, Armenians organized volunteer battalions to help the Russian army fight against the Turks. The Turks' growing suspicions led the government to push for the removal of the Armenians. On April 24, 1915, the first phase of the mass deportation was commenced. Thousands of Armenian intellectuals were kidnapped and killed, and many households were disrupted by the events yet to come. It was an ordinary day. I was in the kitchen mixing our food with my children when the town crier returned and there was a knock at our door. I was startled and confused when I was told that my husband and son were being conscripted into the army and that they had to leave immediately. I told Tigran, "Take care of our son. I'll see you again soon." Little did I know that those would be my last words to him. The four of us looked out the window and I heard the unholy screams of my husband calling my name. "Anush! Anush!" I quickly shielded my girl's eyes and watched as my husband and son were slaughtered on the street. The next day, I saw 6 men being led away by gendarmes, their faces cut and bruised. Soon after, all of the stores closed down. After completing the first steps in his plan, Talat Pasha ordered the forced relocation of the remaining Armenians into the interior of the empire. I have found the perfect place to relocate the traitorous infidels. Look at my progress. I have already accomplished more towards solving the Armenian problem in the last 3 months than the Bloody Sultan accomplished in 30 years. March them to their door. Be loyal to your country and do what's expected of you to be an honorable Turk. Turkey for Turks! Traveling with little food and few supplies, women and children had very little hope of survival. On these journeys, Turkish gendarmes regularly subjected women and girls to sexual violence, while others were kidnapped and sold. Armed bandits robbed the caravans of any remaining possessions they were able to take with them. It has been a month since Tigran and Khatchkar were killed, and things have gotten worse. Women and girls are being dragged away, and I can't help but think of our terrible house. 3 Turkish gendarmes barged through our front door, one of which took my beautiful Ani away, even though I put mud on her face to make her look less attractive. Hearing stories of other girls being taken into harems, I slipped her a small vial of poison. I don't know why they didn't take Lucine. Maybe because she was in 10. Lucine, the baby, and I were taken from our homes and pushed into a large group of women, girls, and elders. I reminded Lucine, everything will be okay. Weeks passed, and The baby died in my arms. She starved to death because I had no other milk to feed her. We marched for 110 days. The old and the sick who could walk no more, or were abandoned on the side of the road, or killed by the gendarmes. We finally made it to Aleppo, where the remaining people were put in these camps. As I lay sick and dying in this filthy refugee camp, a missionary approached me and told me that she was here to help. She said she was going to take me to an orphanage where I would be safe again. I raised my eyes to heaven and thanked my God for answering my prayers. The dying prayers of my mother, my father, and an entire nation. American missionaries from the Near East Relief Foundation helped build an estimated 212 orphanages for over 200,000 genocide-stricken orphans. Missionaries and ambassadors were witnesses to the deplorable conditions of the concentration camps. Outraged, they documented the stories they heard and what they saw. Directed to the U.S. government, dreadful things are happening to the Ottoman Empire. I'm working in a refugee camp in Aleppo. Everywhere I look, I see devastation. Old men sit mumbling incoherently. Women with matted hair and sunken eyes, staring like maniacs. One whose face will haunt my memory forever. Her face was so emaciated, and the skin was drawn so tightly over her features that her head appeared only to be a lifeless skull. Her name is Lucille. She spoke of things I will never forget. She saw dead bodies in every direction and on every road. This whole country is one big slaughterhouse. She witnessed Turkish gendarmes cutting open a pregnant woman's stomach to pull the infant out. The law threw it to the ground without noticing its sex. It was a baby boy. Girls were drowning themselves in the Euphrates River to end their suffering. I recognize now that saving these children is the only way their race will ever survive. Signed, Maria Jacobson. This is a genocide denied. Turkey officially continues to deny the incidents of 1915 as a genocide, and the Armenians are denied the right to fully mourn. At the end of World War I, the three pashas were convicted of crimes against humanity. All three escaped with help of their German allies and were eventually assassinated. The country was renamed Turkey with their new leader, Ataturk. Although the annihilation came to an end, the Armenians were denied the right to return to their home country and were forced to explore new places to live. The diaspora has left 2/3 of their entire population living outside of their own country. Turkey is a significant country in the Middle East. Being a key NATO ally makes them very important. With threats of global sanctions, the United States, along with many other countries, refuse to acknowledge the incidents of 1915 as a genocide. Turkish government officials have created laws preventing the use of the word genocide. Restrictions in academia have created an entire population without any knowledge of the events. However, there is a crack in the wall of silence. There is a growing number of Turkish individuals who are openly exploring the truth of their past, however awful it may be. The horror and destruction encountered by the Armenian people present an essential question. Will remembering the past change the course of the future? This is more than a remembrance of the Armenian genocide. It is a warning. By closing our eyes to oppression, we transform ourselves into those we fear and hate. All of us who freely and easily embrace democracy have the responsibility to speak out to those who are in tyranny. Let us not forget that we who enjoy freedom today may not be so fortunate tomorrow.
Thank you, Lauren, for that powerful performance. Can we please give her another round of applause, please? Thank you. Lauren really does demonstrate the power of the youth and the presence and the voice that they have for the next generation. So we look to others like her to lead the way. May I please now invite Ruben Berberian to the stage to introduce our next presenter.
Wow, what a presentation. Thank you very much. We're often accused of just talking to ourselves, so it's a real pleasure when someone from outside of the community spends so much time and effort to acknowledge our history. So we really do thank you very much. Today's event is sponsored by the National Association for Armenian Studies and Research and the Ararat Eskija Museum. Hrair Khatcherian was born in Lebanon in 1961. He moved to Canada in 1984, and he had his first trip to Armenia in 1992. He ran a photography store with his wife Lena, who's in the audience today. And his world came to a shock in 1993. He was diagnosed with terminal lung cancer and was given a 10 days to live prediction. Just imagine if that happened to you. But he did survive, and he decided to change his life, and in this instance, he decided to take pictures of Armenian churches around the world. In 1997, he went to Zeytun and Akbaz, the villages of his grandparents, with Archbishop Mesro Bastian. And believe it or not, after that terminal cancer diagnosis, he ended up climbing Mount Ararat in 2010. For 30 years, Hrair has given lectures around the world about his photography. His photographs have appeared in numerous magazines, newspapers, books, and publications. He has a kind of unique partnership with Claude Armen Moutafian, who uses Hrair's pictures in his books, and Hrair's books have introductions typically written by Claude Moutafian. Hrair has published more than a dozen photography books. I first got to know about Hrair in 1998 when the Armenian International Magazine hosted a lecture here in the Los Angeles area, in Pasadena, as a matter of fact. And that was in 1998. This is the first book I bought. It's called Artsakh, A Photographic Journey, and it was very successful. It had 201 pages, and it came out in 1997. His next book was also about Qarabakh, called Qarabakh 100 Pictures. It came out in 2002. Next came Flying High. Unfortunately, I don't have an example of that book. And next came in 2005, Yergir, a pilgrimage through Western Armenia, and Archbishop Mesro Bastian also participated in that book. And this was, I believe, the first book that had a preface written by Claude Armen Moutafian as well. Next, a book came out in 2010 called Armenian Ornamental Art. This time, the author was Armen Khatcherian, and obviously, Hrair's pictures were in there. Next came Yergir 2 in 2011, 240 pages, and again, Claude Moutafian provided the introduction, and you could tell by this picture how well his photographs are. You could see the detail, in this case, of the Rock of Van. Next came Armenian Architecture by Murad Hashratian, and again, Hrair's pictures were in there, along with another photographer, Zaven Sargsyan. That came out in 2011. Next came Claude Moutafian's book, L'Arménie du Levant, and it's a 2-volume book, and in the second volume, there's just under 50 pictures by Hrair Khatcherian. So Armen Mutafian did use other photographers, but the most pictures used were of Hrair. Next, in 2012, came Armenian ornamental script. And then in 2013, One Church, One Nation. As I mentioned, right after he got his diagnosis, he decided he was going to go all over the world and take pictures of Armenian churches, and I'm assuming that many of them are in this book. And for the 100th anniversary of the genocide commemoration, 100 came out, and this is a very rich book showing all of the old villages and towns in the Ottoman Empire. And again, Claude Mutafian wrote the introduction of this one. Just to give you an idea of his pictures, this one caught my eye in that 100 book because while I was in Akhtamar, they wouldn't let me use a tripod. And I went the second time and I clandestinely tried to use it. But I'm amazed that, that Hawk was able to get away with taking these shots. I mean, the guides and other officials on the island generally don't like you to use a tripod, and here he is with a big pole taking detailed pictures of Holy Cross Church. So I just wanted to share that one picture. Next, in 2016, the Armenian block printed fabric book came out. And again, this was the partnership with Hrair Khatcherian. And finally, today's topic, Khatchkar. And without any further delay, I'd like to invite Hrair Khatcherian to the podium.
Hello everyone. Saturday is an excellent day for enjoying a lecture like this, I believe. So let's go. If you have any questions, I would like you to be involved while I present the book. Please get involved. If you have any questions, like you like something, or if you don't understand what this part of that picture is, just let me know and I will answer. So Khatchkar book is number 14, and if you would like to know what I'm working on right now, it's book number 15. It's going to be called Armenian Manuscripts and Their Birthplaces. So as you can see, every year a book is published. All right, view, full screen, and let's... I first photographed Khatchkars while covering the war in Qarabakh in 1992. A gentleman by the name of Levon gave me a book about the Armenian churches in Artsakh. And I didn't understand why this gentleman of 63 years of age had to give me a book to someone who didn't really know who he was. And I went and photographed the first Khatchkar in the Marduni region. And the gentleman who took me there died, actually. He was a soldier from Marduni. Khatchkar book is like the red book, the 516 pages, and it weighs approximately 7.5 pounds. The design took me 9 months to prepare. That's when I really understood what Khatchkar really means. It was published end of December, and I received the books in 2017, early 2017. Khatchkars, as we know, have different shapes. We have the smallest ones, to the round ones, to the cross type, to the tall ones, and the tallest. So you will notice that the tallest one is 5 meters high, which is on the far right, and it's actually in Turkey, in the Erzincan district. And miraculously, those twin Khatchkars have still been surviving. And the smallest one is a border stone, which the Armenians used it as a Khatchkar in the later dates and it's 0.7 meter high. The book is in 3 languages, Armenian, English, and French, so everybody, I think, in the audience could be able to read. The introduction is done this time by my friend, also a professor from France, Patrick Donabedian. He's a fine gentleman. And the book starts with 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I penkim ta. Why? Because Armenians have a very genius way of dating things from the past. They didn't carve a Khatchkar and say this is 1201. So what they did is, Tavin, they put a number with the words, the alphabets, like A, P, I, penkim ta, etc. So you have to look at Jir, for example, is 100, Ra is 1000. So if Khatchkar was made in the year 1552, you have to get Tavin, Ra, and Aip, 1001. Why we add the 551? Because we had a fight with the other Christians and we didn't want to go to the Romans. So we stayed there. That's how you add up. And then you have an example here how to add up and get the right numbers of this date. So the book is in 3 languages. And it was obvious that I had to start with Artsakh, with Qarabakh. We don't have too many Khatchkars in Qarabakh, in Artsakh, because Artsakh has always been a feudal area. So every army that had to cross from the north to south, from the east to west, had to go through Artsakh. So they destroyed most of the churches, most of the manuscripts, and most of the Khatchkars. So the ones that have survived, you will see some of them here in this book. So this is the first church that I photographed where they had Khatchkars during the war in 1992. And the church was renovated 15 years later. And here are some details of those Khatchkars inside and outside that church. While I was preparing this book, I was thinking, what is a Khatchkar? I read a lot of books by professional, let's say professors who had prepared books about Khatchkars. But what they were really pointing out mostly was the date and who made it and for what reason. But they didn't go beyond that. So I tried to understand that there was a reason for the Khatchkar, which is faith. It's religious. And you will see the parallel that I will have in this book with manuscripts. We have Khatchkars which have survived from the Azeris. They captured some of the area in Qarabakh, and you have a map here with a red dot. As you can see, it's outside the territory of Armenia and Qarabakh, and you have the GPS coordinate. So this book is also interesting for anyone who is willing to see the exact place of that particular Khatchkar. So all you have to do is punch in the numbers on Google Earth, and then you will see the exact location. This is Gandasar in northern Artsakh. What I noticed in my photography that I was not paying attention to details in the beginning. While taking pictures of the Khatchkars, I was taking a full image of the Khatchkar by itself and forgetting the details. So once I started designing the book, I noticed that this Khatchkar, for example, has vines, and what's really interesting is on the lower left side, you have this detail. If you don't have a reflector and a good light on a particular side of the Khatchkar, you will not see this detail. It's Mother Mary with Jesus sitting on the throne. And I have also found a silver cover of a manuscript which is similar to that carving. So as you can see, the Khatchkars are part of the same art that the Armenians used in different subjects, like Khatchkars, manuscripts, doors, and even mitres, for example, that you will see later on. We hiked a lot of places in the woods, for example, with heavy tripods, reflectors, and in order to get this kind of light in the woods, the sun doesn't hit directly. So we had to have reflectors in order to reflect the sun and get details of the Khatchkars. And here you have two birds, for example, and then the drawings of these two birds. That way you have a better idea of the detail and the workmanship of those Khatchkar warbeds. I call the image on the far right life and death in harmony. The Khatchkar represents death, and the tree represents life. So there's a balance between life and death. And I believe that when someone passes away, life doesn't cease. And one of the examples I can bring in is the late Archbishop Mesrop-Ashtian. He's still breathing on my shoulders. Every time I prepare a book, it's because of him. So he taught me all these workmanship, how to prepare books, how to present it to people. Again, we're going to see Khatchkars in different parts of Artsakh with the details, with the red dot on the map. We had to hike a couple hours in order to reach this place, through rivers, through mud, through rain. 3 hours to hike to this place, which is, by the way, very close to the Armenian-Azerbaijani border. The attack that took place in early April last year, last year, took place not far from this monastery, which is called Yegishe Arakyal Monastery. So it's really difficult to reach some of these places. Some are not as difficult. For example, this one, Dadivank, in liberated lands between Artsakh and Armenia, Kalbajar region. And you see the Khatchkars here on the right and left, and these are the details of those Khatchkars. And like I said, we have inscriptions on the Khatchkars, and then here it says Tevin Vo Le Te, and then Vo Le Te is 639. So if you take Vo is 600, Le is 30, and To is 9, and then you add 551, and you get the date of this Khatchkar, which is 1190, so 12th century. Some places we sleep in a tent or a guest house or the villager's house, and then early in the morning we wake up and we take these shots. And the two tallest Khatchkars of Artsakh are located in the bell tower of Dadivank. Dadivank was under the control of the Azeris for 2 years. But miraculously, they did not destroy the Khatchkars. Yes?
How do you find out the date?
That's what I said. You have, like here, it says Der Krikoris, Anuto, Der Atanasi, Yishetsek, and then you have the date. On the sides here, you have Tevin, and then the alphabet, and then that's how we know this particular Khatchkar is carved for this person's memory, for the salvation of the soul of that person, and the date is so and so. Not all of them. Now, you will see that many Khatchkars don't even have inscriptions. These are interesting because we have the inscriptions. See, this is from 1181. And it's embedded inside the church wall. What they used to, why did they use these Khatchkars in the wall is very simple. When they renovated the church, anything that was around the church, like Khatchkars or other interesting sculptures, they included them inside the walls to protect the church and also to make it more beautiful. And there is an exception that you will see later on that Khatchkars are used as masonry also. This particular Khatchkar from Dadivank, they had cut it in half and chiseled it and used it as an altar table at Dadivank. Later on, they found out that this was used as an altar table. They brought it back out and they married the two pieces together. And there's an inscription which is complete now from top to bottom. But what's really intriguing is on this left side, there is an inscription which is decoded by one of the professors, and the prince leaves a message. He says, I am not taking anything with me from this life, neither will you. So he left a message to his sons that whatever you're doing, it's going to stay on this planet. So they were wise. Each Khatchkar, or let's say Khatchkars which are prepared in Artsakh or Armenia or other parts, they have the taste of the local people. Here you see the Mother Mary and the Jesus are like more Artsakhzi. And here we have a sample of a manuscript to point towards the Khatchkar, so that you look at the Khatchkar. Many Khatchkars are difficult to photograph because they are indoors. And here, for example, this one, it's in the shadows. So what I did is get a flashlight, and let's say this is the Khatchkar, and I painted the Khatchkar from the side with light. Painting, it doesn't mean that you literally paint the Khatchkar, but the light, if it goes up and down and you leave it on a tripod for a long period of time, you get a side lighting, and you can see the details of all these inscriptions, and also the detailed workmanship that you see around the Khatchkar. That's what makes it different from regular shots, because you have, as a photographer, I keep going to the same place multiple times in order to grab. Either the lighting has to be very, very good, or if I did fail, let's say in the beginning, to get a good shot, I return with the proper equipment and reshoot those images. One Khatchkar, for example, in Artsakh, as you can see, it's been defaced with the graffiti, but this part is washed out almost, and this is the detail of that corniche. We call it kiv in Armenian, and in the detail you see that Jesus is sitting on a throne, and his 12 apostles are on each side of his throne. And I took the vagas from Echmiadzin to have a parallel to show that these things keep repeating themselves in other mediums. A Khatchkar with beautiful motifs, but if you pay attention here, we have a bird trying to puncture its throat. That I will show you later on what it means. Some churches, like I said, they used Khatchkars to renovate it. So this is Biri Yekhsi in Artsakh. It's in northern Artsakh. You see the dot, and it's all designed with Khatchkars, which is really beautiful. The rest of the church, it's not really as beautiful as the Khatchkars that they have used for decoration. Some Khatchkars are groupings of Khatchkars for, let's say, the birth of a village, or a successful repelling of the army, the attacking army, the enemy, winning the enemy. So this is one of those typical Khatchkars, which has 4 Khatchkars, and this was taken in with sun, and this was taken while it was cloudy, because I wanted to see the details on this side. See here, you don't have those details because of the sun and the shadows. The details of other Khatchkars in Hantaper region, again in Kalbajar, you see the Virgin and Child, the Nursing Madonna, we call it. We have the same thing happening in manuscripts. Jesus is getting milk from Mary. And what's really interesting is very unique, that Jesus is actually standing, and he's not in his mother's arms. This is also a typical Khatchkar. Beautiful carvings of the Khatchkars and their details. That was the detail that you just saw. And it's a parallel between manuscripts as well. Here you see the cross, the birds, and the birds. This is earth, and this is heaven. So again, in the manuscript we have earth and heaven split in two. What is a Khatchkar? Basically, a Khatchkar is the creation of the Word by God, the creation of Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve make a mistake by eating from the forbidden tree. They're kicked out of heaven, and Jesus is born. Jesus is crucified, Jesus ascends, he returns, he destroys the hell, grabs Adam by the hand, and brings him up to the heavens again. So this is the concept of the Khatchkar. That's what I finally tried to show in this book. This is Adam, the skull of Adam. Jesus is crucified. Adam and Eve, they're in heaven. They tried the forbidden fruit, and Adam and Eve are outside heaven, and they're crying because they're no more in heaven. But Khatchkar did not come overnight. We had pre-Christian sculptures, pagan, the Fali, and also the Vishabakar, or Vishab is dragon stones. So why did the Armenians use the Fali? It was very simple. They placed the Fali in the middle of a field so that they have a good production. And the Vishabakar represented water. So in order to have a good crop, you had to have these two items in the middle of the field. And then what the Armenians did is took one of the Fali and turned it into Khatchkar. And this is the Ktayes. It's the female version of the Fali. Again, that represents reproduction. And they're placed next to the Khatchkars as well. So the Khatchkars are the descendants, let's say, of the same symbolism, reproduction. Border stones which are turned into Khatchkar, and this is a sample of Vishabkar. Again, Vishabkars which were used as Khatchkars, because St. Gregory the Illuminator, when he forced King Dertar to become Christians, they destroyed all the temples, the pagan temples, and whatever they had as Vishabkars. The earliest crosses that we have are in the northern facade of Surp Echmiadzin in Armenia. This is dated from the 3rd century. Why do we have a Hellenic inscription? Because the Armenian alphabet was not created then. Mesrop Mashod created the Armenian alphabet 100 years later. Khatchkars with details of birds, the skull of Adam. Again, as you can see, the symbolism of the cross is Jesus, and with Jesus sacrificing his life, he's saving the first sinner who was Adam. Some of the crosses that we have in Art, the mausoleum of Ashraguni kings, built in 365. The Basilica of Kasach in Abaran, 5th century. The capitals that we see, Mary and Jesus. When you visit Armenia and you go to Kherat, you will notice that on one of the Khatchkars you have 3 subjects. This one is Gabriel announcing the good news to Mary, that she will be bearing Jesus. Jesus is sitting on the throne, and Jesus is baptized by John the Baptist. So here I try to make a parallel with manuscripts. Jesus is being baptized, Jesus on the throne, and Gabriel giving the good news to Mary. Details from this Khatchkar on the bottom left. It's the scene of nativity here. And this is a manuscript where you have the same scene, nativity scene. And what does this right side represent? It's not a father and mother and a child. It's actually the presentation of Jesus to the temple. See this middle part of the manuscript? It's the same thing. Jesus was given to the temple 40 days later, after his birth. That's the Khatchkar that I showed you from Kherat. The top corniche is this one. And as you can see, the same motifs are used in mitres and manuscripts. So the mitre is needlework. I took one particular Khatchkar from Sevan, which was built in 1653, and there are so many details on it. One of the tourist guides was explaining to the tourists that this is the nativity scene, which is correct. Here I tried to get a portion of it, and then you see details of Armenian manuscripts where you have the nativity scene. What's really interesting is this one. It looks like Picasso painting. If you really notice this part, it's like a Picasso, but actually that was made by an Armenian manuscript illuminator in the year 1283. So Picasso must have gotten some idea from other artists, maybe from the Armenians, by the way. We try to make everything Armenian, like the Greeks would say everything is Greek, so here we go. Anyway, the Khatchkar has an inscription on the top. This part on the right side is the second coming of Jesus. He's sitting on the throne, and the angels are announcing the second coming of Jesus. Jesus is crucified, and these are the two donors here. And the tourist guide was explaining that this part were the three shepherds, because here is the scene of nativity, so this must be the three shepherds. But actually those are not the three shepherds, because if you look on top of these three gentlemen who are bald, they are actually burning in hell. That's why they don't have hair. Yeah, I don't have hair, but I haven't been to hell yet. So this is the balance of the sins. You have the devil who's trying to pull as many innocent people to hell. So it's really interesting to see so many details in that Khatchkar. The bottom part of the Khatchkar, I didn't know what that really represented. So actually this is Jesus descending and destroying hell's doors and holding on to Adam and pulling him from hell. Here in the manuscripts that you see the same thing, and you have also, what's really good about the manuscript is in Old Armenian, in Karapar, you have the exact explanation why Jesus went down to pick up Adam. And then on this side here we have a manuscript which is exactly the same. It's the balancing of the sins, and the three people are shivering in, actually burning in hell. It took me 2 weeks for these 4 pages to design. These 4 pages. Because I had to really think how to explain it so that it becomes more easy for people to understand. And then we have Mother Mary and Jesus, and then here you will see that it's the same thing is repeating in Armenian, in English, and in French. What's really interesting about this Khatchkar is you have 4 round circles, and also on this manuscript we have 4 circles, round circles. The middle is a cross, and also in the manuscript as well. And that's Mother Mary and Jesus also. And that's one of the oldest manuscripts that is kept in a village in Georgia. It's an Armenian village. So every time somebody is sick, they bring that manuscript next to the bed of the sick until he or she is cured. Jesus and Mary in different forms, on a Khatchkar, on a manuscript, on a Kütahya Havchabagi, ceramic, and also manuscripts as well on the top left side. Oops. Khatchkars and manuscripts, same theme continuing. One particular Khatchkar from Sevan. This is an old image which I had taken from the archives of San Lazzaro in Venice, the Mechitarist congregation. You see the Khatchkar where it used to stand. And this particular Khatchkar has carvings of text all around it. But one side, this one, the left side, the Varbed, what he did is he chiseled it in a mirror. Why did he do it? I don't know. But what I did is flip the image, and I put it there here, horizontal flipped image, so that we are able to read the Armenian. And then you have the whole text here. And it was built in 1448, created in 1448. Now we jump again to the subject of the bird puncturing its throat. After researching with manuscripts, I found out that the same thing is happening in the manuscript as well. See, on top, the bird is feeding its children with its own blood to save them. And the same thing is happening with Jesus. That's the symbolism of the Khatchkar and the bird. Jesus, with his blood, is saving Adam's sins. So that's the comparison. Here we have again Adam on different Khatchkars and different manuscripts, and it's written in Armenian, Adam Nachahair, our forefather. And that's Adam on the eastern facade of Akhtamar. Here we have the crucifixion, a detail of a Khatchkar which was broken, and then the Roman Longinus piercing the side of Jesus with the lance, with the Holy Lance. And I tried to get also an image from the manuscript which is parallel to that Khatchkar. We see that some Khatchkars are repeating. On the left we have the crucifixion. And what's really interesting is on Khatchkars and also on wooden doors and mitres and manuscripts, there are 4 evangelist symbols. The far left is the winged man, the far right is the eagle, the ox, and the left one, let me see. We have the ox. I gotta jump to the next one. See, it's repeating itself here. On Khatchkars, on frescoes in Lampat, and paintings from Isfahan, Surpamena Pergic. The evangelist and its symbol. The eagle is Surpavannes on the far right bottom. The ox, Aryuzene, the lion, and the winged man or the angel. The same thing is repeated in Subkhach Santa Croce in Venice, in Italy. And on the right side from Areni in Armenia. Again, the symbols of the evangelist. So the Khatchkars are only repeating the same images that are used on mitres and other Khatchkars. Again, here we have Hovannes, Luke is the bull, Mark is the lion, and Matthias is the winged man or the angel. Some Khatchkars from the History Museum, round Khatchkars and a boy kissing the Khatchkar, a girl kissing Khatchkars, the Khatchkars of Kerat, which are chiseled inside rocks. It's a magnificent place, you should visit it. Ancient Greek inscription, which they used as Khatchkar at a later date, at Garni. And the far right is also a Khatchkar, the oldest dated Khatchkar that we have. It's in Garni and it's dated in 879. Now you're going to tell me we didn't have any Khatchkars older than 879? Yes, we do. 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th century we have, but we don't have any inscriptions on them. The professors know that those Khatchkars are particular from that era. So this one has inscription on it dating to 879. Khachkars from Garni, different shapes, different motifs. Again, for the question you asked, how do we know? Here, To means the date, Tavin, Ngp, which is 462. By adding 551, we get 1013. So that Khachkar is 11th century. The Khachkars on the far right are 8th and 9th century. See, the details are simpler, bolder. Khachkars from different places. Boys next to the Khachkars, which I took 20 years ago. I would like to know what they have become. Areni, Khachkars from Noravank. One particular artist, he was an architect, he was a Khachkar carver, and he was also a manuscript illuminator, and his name was Mumik, and this Khachkar is dedicated to him. He died in the year 1333. Khachkars in northern Armenia, in the woods. Again, the lighting is very important for Khachkars. Khachkars are usually standing east facing west. So the most beautiful part of a Khachkar is the western side. And in order to get those details, it's not late afternoon, it's not early in the morning, but when the sun is actually hitting it at an angle about 10 to 20 degrees from the top, which is about 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock. And in order to reach this place, we had to get a big truck because it was a muddy place and we could not go through the mud. And we chose early spring. The leaves are not sprout yet, in order to get these shots. Because once the leaves are grown, the light will not hit the Khachkars any longer. So it takes a lot of planning today to take these shots. Khachkar details, as if they are needleworks. I pay attention to small details as well. See, this Khachkar is, like I said, it's a tombstone at the same time. It represents death. But a tiny green sprout is being born from the ashes of that Khachkar. The cemetery of Orange and the Khachkars there, the details are amazing. See, each region has its own character, its own style. This is the Ashtarak region. Some Khachkars are embedded inside the cupola of a church. See, we have a Khachkar embedded in the roof. So when you look up, you will see those Khachkars. This is the church of Derer. Jesus and Adam. Jesus and Adam. So it's very basic. A Khachkar from Samosavank and the Khachkar detail with the inscription here. Khachkars of Samosavank. A priest, Der Yerishe, who for 37 years was a priest at this church, and I was lucky to know him. He was a fine gentleman, and he is buried at next to these Khachkars at Bijni. Some of the details of Bijni. Sometimes you have to pay really close attention to see that they are not just flowers, but birds, bird heads. Khachkars in different parts of Armenia. Khachkars on top, on rocks, carved inside rocks. Jesus looking like a Mongol, because Armenia was ruled by Mongols, and in order for the Armenian architect or Armenian Varvet to be able to carve some of these Khatchkars during those invasions, they had to make it look like a Mongol, the Jesus, so that they don't destroy the Khatchkar. So Armenians were really smart enough to be creative when things got tough. This Khatchkar is erected for the creation of a village. The tallest Khatchkar in Armenia, which is 3.9 meters high, which makes it 13 feet high. It's in the village of Zolakar, southwest of Sevan. Some Khatchkars are twins. Indiana Jones. I'm sure you have seen those movies, most of you at least. In it he says, "I hate snakes." I do hate snakes also. In order to get this Khatchkar image and this angel, I had to go through multiple snakes, not one, not two, multiple snakes. So in order to get to this church, which is here, and this is where that Khatchkar is located, we have to snake ourselves through those snakes. Some of the Khatchkars are different from the usual ones, which are taller. Khatchkars inside museums. Khatchkars and manuscripts that look similar. The beauty of the Armenian barbets, the master carvers, and some of the churches where the Khatchkars are located. 3 seasons, same place, winter, summer, and fall. No, actually this is, it is fall. And the old traditions have not ceased. As pagan, we used to give offerings to the gods. So if somebody was sick and he recovered, today they have a rooster or a sheep slaughtered as an offering. So that tradition still continues today. And here are some of the heads of the roosters. So if you go to Armenia and you see those roosters, it's not something evil, or like in Haiti, it's not bad omen. It's just an offering for the gods. Khatchkars in summer and in winter, same place. Khatchkars which are embedded inside a church where moss is growing, that's why we have this green effect. Khatchkars, thousands of Khatchkars in Armenia, and each one of them is different. I love this shot with the Khatchkar and the shepherd with its flock right next to it. It represents Jesus with his flock. The church and its surroundings with the Khatchkars. The same Khatchkar detail, 2 different seasons. The moss even changes color. I took this shot on the right, far right, on top, through the glass of the car because it was raining cats and dogs and I couldn't go out. 10 minutes later is this shot. Can you imagine the difference? In 10 minutes, you can get a sunny shot of the same Khatchkars. A military helicopter was given to me by the Minister of Defense, and I was able to shoot the cemetery of Noradus, where we have more than 400 Khatchkars. This part, the left top part. The middle part is 18th to 20th century tombstones. And look at the 21st century. Man is becoming greedier and greedier. Even his grave site is becoming bigger and bigger. I'm not sure they're enjoying it anyways. Khatchkars at Noradus. The elderly at Noradus, sunbathing by the Khatchkars. And I love also this image. 5 kids were coming out of the Khatchkar fields, and they look like Khatchkars. What is this bird? Peacock. Peacock is the bird of heaven. That's why here the cross has 2 peacocks, because those are the birds of heaven. So Here the Khatchkar is represented as Jesus going to the heavens. A man standing by a Khatchkar. This particular man is very brave. There's a Khatchkar next to this one, a smaller Khatchkar, and there's an image of his brother, and the date of his birth, and the date of his, when he died, chiseled on that Khatchkar. Next to that image, portrait of his brother, there's an image, a portrait of himself, and the date of his birth, with a small line, plus number 20. So he's ready to die. All the villagers have to do is chisel the numbers, the day that he dies, and put him in the sarcophagus that he has already prepared for himself.
What height is that?
3 meters, 12 feet. 12 feet. Khatchkar details from the north of Armenia. East-west, I said in the beginning. Why is the Khatchkar facing west? And how is an Armenian gentleman or a lady buried? Very simply, the head is on the western side, the feet are on the eastern side. East. This is east, and this is west. East, west. Why? Because for the second coming, when Jesus comes from the east, the deceased have to rise up and face Jesus. So that's why the Khatchkars are facing west, and the deceased are facing east. But now in Armenia they do it opposite. They don't understand the idea of the Khatchkar. Bringing Jesus down from the cross, detailed from the Khatchkar, and also wooden Khatchkars or crosses, and also the manuscripts that you see on the left side. It's bringing Jesus from the cross. And then here we have Hampartsum, Ascension, Khatchkars, Khatchkar details, manuscripts, Khatchkar details, again Khatchkar details on the far right. Jesus is ascending, and 12 apostles on this medallion which I photographed at the memorial of Sardarabad. And here we have the 12 apostles next to Jesus crucified on the far right. And that's the cover image that I used on the book. This is Hakhpat, northern Armenia. Details of some of the Khatchkars there. I love the shot on the right side. Ararat is floating in midair. Khatchkars which look like crosses. Khatchkar details. This is a great idea for graphic designers and whoever wants to be creative. All they have to do is copy the old Khatchkars. Some Khatchkars are embedded next to mausoleums up in the hills. The sun and the moon, representing the sun and the moon when Jesus was crucified. Sun and the moon on Khatchkars. The Last Judgment. I am the light of the word. Yesem Luisa Ashkhari. Khatchkar details. This particular Khatchkar, I went and photographed it 4 times because the sun is very important. In the summertime, the sun rises more from southern side, and in the wintertime, it's more towards the northern side. And this particular image, we have to pay really close attention because there is the balance. That's the balance of the sins. And you cannot see this detail if you are there 1 minute before or 2 minutes after, because the sun hits it directly and you don't have the details of the shadows here. So there were fishermen right next to the door, to the main road there. They asked me, what do you have with this Khatchkar? Why are you coming back and photographing this Khatchkar? So I had to explain to them that it's very important to dig this part, for example, the bottom part, so that we can see that Jesus is harrowing the hell, destroying the hell's door, and picking up Adam by the hand, killing the devil, which is represented as not a snake, dragon, correct. Here, the details of manuscript. Why do we have grapes on Khatchkars? I tried to get a parallel image from a painting which I photographed in Isfahan, Iran. And here you can see the side of Jesus is bleeding, and he's holding on to the grapes, and that's his blood. So with his blood is paying off the sins of Adam. And this is also an interesting detail, because usually in Armenian we don't write Christos, the whole word. We take the first and the last word. Chris, K, Christos, so this is Christos. K means Jesus Christ, or Christ. We have also Subsarkis on some of the Khatchkars on the far right. We have Bogos Bedros on Khatchkars and also on churches. These are Bogos Bedros because they have the keys for heaven. Again, everything is related to Christianity. So the crosses, the Khatchkars, are not just tombstones. They represent something from the Bible. I used this gentleman as scale to show you how big the Khatchkar is, how tall the Khatchkar is, and the kids also, so that you have an idea what the Khatchkars look like. Not all Khatchkars are protected in Armenia. Some Khatchkars are fallen, and they need to be taken care of. So what we do is present these images to the Ministry of Culture and tell them such and such place has Khatchkars, which some of the locals are actually removing them to have a bigger cemetery for the newly deceased. So we try to also act, when I say we, I mean with my friends who are photographers, and we do the same thing in photographing Khatchkars and churches. Again, Khatchkar details. Datev in central Armenia. Sunset, and a Khatchkar is going to sleep. Crosses, Khatchkars carved inside rocks. Khatchkar details, scary. And some Khatchkars are actually protected inside a small chapel. And then you have to ask an old lady to open it up and to be able to photograph the Khatchkar details. Sometimes it's good because they are protecting a very beautiful Khatchkar. If not, it could be damaged. Khatchkars from Irk, northeastern Armenia. The seraphims, these are the highest angels. Khatchkars which were done by the same artist. Here we see the details of Khatchkars from northern Armenia, and then we see Khatchkars, similar Khatchkars in Georgia. Here you see the dot, it's outside Armenia. Now you will ask me, why do we have similar Khatchkars done by the same artist or the same Varbet and in Georgia today? Well, it used to be Armenia before. We lost that part of the territory during the Soviet era. Today it's in Georgian territory. Khatchkar details in Georgia, Armenian Khatchkars. And then we jump to Western Armenia. We go to Turkey. By the base of Ararat, we have Khatchkars dating from 1500, 1436. There used to be a Surpagok church which was destroyed by the earthquake. These are some of the Khatchkars there. Khatchkars at Hormuz Monastery. I didn't know that this area was infected with landmines, and I was lucky that I didn't step on one. This is Sur Bartholomew's church with the details of some of the Khatchkars in the walls, cars. You remember I told you some of the Armenian churches have decorations of Khatchkars on the facades, but in this particular instance, the Kurds who live in the previous Surp Garabet monastery site, they have used the Khatchkars to build their homes. It's not for decoration, it's used as masonry. An old photograph of two Khatchkars from Surp Arakelo church in Mush, and then here we see the biggest two manuscripts which are held in Armenia today at Madenataran. This part is this one, which I photographed in Madenataran. And from this Khatchkar, only this survives, the three small pieces. Khatchkars on the other side of Ararat, near Doğu Bayazid. Khatchkars in southern Van, east of Van, Surp Thomas, Surp Stepanos of Pergri, north of Van. We have 4 islands in the lake of Van. This is one of them, Lim. And we also have a church which is still half intact. And we have also Khatchkars in the area of that island. Akhtamar is very well known, and it's a very touristic site. Khatchkars of Akhtamar, which are different from the rest of the Khatchkars because they're chiseled on different types of basalt rocks. And the western facade of Akhtamar has 3 Khatchkars. Khatchkars inside churches. These are all like 5th century, 7th century, 9th century Armenian churches in the basin of Van. These are proof that the Armenians lived there. Guduts, that's another island in Lake Van. And we have also Khatchkars in Letsk. That used to be an Armenian village. Nothing is left of it, but at least we still have some of the Khatchkars and the tombstones of the village of Letsk. The fortress of Van has multiple Khatchkars used as a fortress wall. Here we go, we have the Khatchkars. And here again we have the inscriptions, Tavin, which is 946, adding 551 you get 1497. So 16th century Khatchkar adorning or enforcing, let's say, the fortress of Van. And 1199 Khatchkar also adorning the fortress. Some Khatchkars are exhibited in different parts of the museums in Turkey. Cilicia has very few Khatchkars. This is Korikos, and we have 1 Khatchkar and 2 Khatchkar. Hrair has a few Khatchkars in the walls. Hrair is very well known for as a base for Catholicosate, and also a very good scriptorium where they had magnificent manuscript prepared. Again, we have some Khatchkars or tombstones surviving in different museums in Turkey. The Paperon fortress on the far right has 1 Khatchkar. These are the 2 tallest Khatchkars that I was talking about in the beginning. And I placed it horizontally so that when you look at the book, you have to flip it. Because I didn't want to have a design which is top to bottom. The Khatchkar would have been very small, and you would have skipped the details of these 2 magnificent Khatchkars. And you can read all the inscription in Armenian of the Khatchkars on the far right. They date from the 13th century. Like I said, I keep on going to the same place again and again. Here in 2014, the Khatchkar was standing. 2015, they had already damaged the top part, and they're digging the bottom part of the Khatchkar looking for gold. The gold diggers are mostly Kurds in the region. Two tall Khatchkars also, and other types of Khatchkars near Bitlis, south of Van. You see the Khatchkars and the building that the Kurds are erecting next to the Khatchkars. This particular Khatchkar was cut in half, and they use it as masonry. And this part is flipped on the left side to show you the bird and the fish in its mouth. Some Khatchkars are used as fountain decor, Khatchkars which are defaced, and Khatchkars which are used as steps. Every morning and every evening they get up and step on our Khatchkars. Khatchkars that we don't have anymore, so all we have is the archival photographs on the far right. Khatchkar from Khatchkar, this is from Tegor, which dates from 940, if I'm not mistaken, 941. Meren, in the year 2000, the military captured, they took us for questioning because I was photographing this church and the Khatchkars. We were not allowed to because it's very close to the border with Armenia. The Khatchkar 5 monastery church were blown up in the late 60s, 70s. As you can see, there used to be a Khatchkar next to it, not anymore. This is an archival photograph on the far right. Takes a lot of research work to find out where the Khatchkar images are. So, Van, the fortress of Van, and the Khatchkars there. 10th century Armenian churches carved inside rocks with crosses on them. We jumped to Antelias. I tried to include a few different institutions who have Khatchkars. This is Lebanon. Crimea, for example, Subsarkish church has 2 Khatchkars in front. Substepanos and Subtade in northern Iran has Khatchkars on the domes of the churches there. Isfahan or New Julfa has Armenian Khatchkars embedded inside the churches. What's really interesting is when you go to Jerusalem and you enter the Holy Sepulchre, you will see many crosses which were done by Armenian pilgrims, and you also have Armenian inscriptions on some of them. This one, for example, is dating from 1721, and therefore the parents of such and such. We have mosaic tiles in Jerusalem as well. Jesus with the 2 thieves. Again, you see in the parallel with the manuscript, it's the same theme being repeated. These are all embedded Khatchkars inside the walls of Jerusalem Church at St. James. And in order to photograph this, I used a big ladder that you will see at the end of the book. Again, some of the Khatchkars at Jerusalem. One particular cross, this is an old image, archival image. This is the entrance of Bethlehem. This is Bethlehem on the far bottom. And this is a wooden Khatchkar that was carved in the year 1227. This is also interesting that we have Khatchkars not made only from rock or doof, but also from wood. A Japanese artist getting inspiration from a Khatchkar. We have one example of Khatchkar at San Lazzaro, Subhazar in Venice. The Metropolitan Museum of New York has one Armenian Khatchkar, which I had photographed in 2007 in its location. Now it is exhibited at the New York Metropolitan Museum. And next year the Metropolitan Museum will hold a big exhibition with pieces brought from Armenia, manuscripts, Khatchkars, and other religious artifacts, starting 21st of September 2018. And this is a Khatchkar from the United Nations. This is a sad image. This particular photograph, I took it from the northern Iran into Nakhichevan, which was given by Stalin to the Azeris. And what the Azeris did is, we used to have 10,000 Khatchkars here. The Russians also used some of the Khatchkars to build the train tracks. So they used the Khatchkars as stones for their train tracks. This image is taken in 1997. This image is taken in 2006. They destroyed more than 4,000 Khatchkars completely, and they dumped them into the Arax River. So this was in the year 2003 when they bulldozed all the Khatchkars of Nakhichevan. What I did is, I went after the Nakhichevan Khatchkars, and I tried to find as many as possible in order to give my respect to what we lost. So these three Khatchkars are from Echmiadzin. Actually, they're from Nakhichevan, Old Jurfa, and they are kept at Echmiadzin today. This particular one is at the History Museum of Armenia. The rest are they're kept at Echmiadzin. And the far right one at the Yerevan Brandy Company in Armenia. One gentleman from Nakhichevan, before he died, he asked his sons to bring 2 Khatchkars from the Jurfa cemetery. So they did. After he passed away, they brought 2 Khatchkars. One of them is the cemetery slab here, and then they chiseled his name on the far right, his date of birth, 1850 something, and then he died 1960. On the second Khatchkar on top it says Ir Uzat Kare. So that was the father's wish to bring those 2 Khatchkars. At least those 2 Khatchkars survived, even though they're defaced a bit. They survived those total destruction. These are Khatchkars also kept at Echmiadzin. This is the copy from the History Museum of Armenia. And I flew to St. Petersburg, Russia, in order to photograph this old Jurfa Khatchkar, which they have at the Hermitage Museum in St. Petersburg. And it dates from the 1599. It's very similar to the one that you have outside, the copy. This is an old photograph that Armen Kürkcan's father has taken, and Armen gave me these images so that we can use it in this book. And these are details of the Khatchkars, the 6 Khatchkars that we have in Tbilisi, Georgia. And I had to ask the Ministry of Culture of Armenia to get in touch with the Ministry of Culture of Georgia in order to get permission to photograph these. Some of the places like Hermitage Museum, you just cannot take your tripod and put it and take any photograph. So you have to have access through channels, which I'm very good at. One particular Khatchkar in Tbilisi, Georgia, the Jurfa Khatchkar, the top portion that you see on the right side, the 2 carvings on the left is the Angel Gabriel, the Annunciation of the Blessed Virgin Mary on these 2. The 2 adjoining ones are this one. It represents the nativity scene, and the far right, the piece which is on the far right, is the presentation of Jesus to the temple. So as you can see, those 5 pieces represent images from the Bible. These are the 6 Khatchkars, and actually the 4 that you see, and the 2 are on the other page, and ram-shaped tombstones with Armenian inscription on them. These are all kept at the Ethnographic Museum in Georgia. The book started with Adam and Eve, the creation, and it ends with Adam and Eve. This is Adam and Eve on a Khatchkar in Noravank. You have Adam and Eve bas-relief on Akhtamar, the northern facade, and also on some of the manuscripts. We also have one Jurfa Khatchkar in Geneva, Switzerland, which is the far right. And we also have one Khatchkar from the Louvre, which is the red one, and one Khatchkar, small Khatchkar also in St. Petersburg, Russia. Hagop Titizian was the sponsor of the book. He was generous enough to donate for the publication cost of this book. And Hagop loves Khatchkars. When we met in Armenia, he said, Hawk, what is your next project? I said, Khatchkars. He said, I want to sponsor this book. You don't mind? I said, why would I mind? And he made a duplicate of those two tallest Khatchkars in Erzincan district. And this is my image, the one that you see half dark. And this is the Khatchkar in progress, the second duplicate that they're making. So I had to make the exact size image of the Khatchkar, which is 16 or 17 feet, let's say, and the masters in Armenia did the copies. Here's on the left side you see the original ones, and on the right side the copies that Hagop sponsored. This is how I took the images of Khatchkars in Jerusalem. I had to drag that big ladder with me. And here you see that I use tape measures to document the churches, one leg on one side, the other leg on the other side. And I'm balancing myself on top of a rock. And I always make a joke that I can balance myself almost everywhere, but I fall every time I dance with Lena, my wife. Maybe I should go to a dance school. These images were taken by Zaven Sarkisian, my friend, the Parageneral Museum director, and this lady is the last Armenian who died actually from Nakhichevan. So we don't have the Khatchkars, we don't even have Armenians anymore in Nakhichevan. These are the 14 book publications that I have so far, and I thank a lot of people who have helped me in translations, in designing, in helping me research, giving me access, and at the end of the book, I say in Armenian, in old Armenian Krapar, Hrair Khatcherian Nagarovas, Agachem Hishel Ider Zi Garim Aischape. What it means is, usually in manuscripts, what the author or the illuminator would say, I, who have sinned, have prepared this manuscript. But in this case, what I'm saying is that I did not accomplish what I wanted to, because this Khatchkar book is not complete. There are so many Khatchkars, and in a book of 516, it's not enough to place all the thousands of Khatchkars that we have. Thank you.
Any questions? Who's coming?
Are all the Khatchkar carvers in Armenia, or are there any carvers in the U.S., for example?
Khatchkar carvers in the U.S.? I have no knowledge of Khatchkar sculptures in the U.S., but there are many Khatchkar sculptures in Armenia. But what they're trying to do is ornate Khatchkars, which has nothing to do with what I tried to explain. You know, here we have Jesus, nativity scene, Annunciation, harrowing of hell. So these biblical or theological images are not carved on the new Khatchkars. What they're doing is eagles and ornate crosses, but the spirit is not there. So for me, it is very important that these books are also studied by those master carvers, so that they make exact, even if they don't make exact replicas, at least they can stay the course of the real Khatchkar.
In fact, there are Khatchkar makers in the United States,
Okay.
but they are recent immigrants from Armenia.
Okay. Fine. That answers your question. Yes.
Was there any Armenian artifacts destroyed by the ISIS in where we hear it in the last?
I don't know.
years?
I haven't been in those regions. I've been in Syria where we had 40 Martyrs church, and there are Khatchkars embedded on the walls, but I'm not sure if those are damaged or not. But those would be damaged by bombs, not by... Yes, you're right. I remember going to... in Syria... Derzor. Yeah, in Derzor. I had photographed the church where you had Khatchkars also. They blew up the entire church. That nothing is left of it. Yes, ISIS did that. You're right. There are certain sizes that it's being repeated on different Khatchkars, and when you multiply them, you see that they go by size. And it's the same thing with churches also, interiors or exteriors. Yes, but that somebody has to do it like an architect or because what I did is just measure the length of the Khatchkar. That is totally. It's very interesting because. One gentleman, a professor from Armenia, said, after seeing your book, the next generation will be excited enough for centuries to come to get details from your book and make more research. So I think at least I've succeeded in that sense.
I have a question regarding the Star of David on some of the churches. Can you maybe elaborate on that a little?
It's not the Star of David per se. A lot of people say that's the Star of David, but that has been used before even by the Indians and others, and that sometimes is represented as the female and the male form also. No, sun and earth also, but usually they say it's a male and female. That's the creation of Adam and Eve. Also, so there's nothing Jewish in it.
Also, it's a universal sign.
Yes.
Okay, you said that Akhtamar is a touristic place. So, do you know what the Turkish tour guides, how they explain the tourists, like, all those Armenian Khatchkars and the churches? What do they tell them?
In the beginning, when we used to go with Archbishop Ashtian in 1997, usually the word Armenian was not used. It's only after so many Armenians visiting the area, and also they realized that it's a potential touristic site for others also to come, not only for Armenians, but Christians in general. So the Turks are very smart. What they did is start rebuilding some of the Armenian churches and also Christian churches, not only Armenians, with the financing of the Europeans, and to show that they didn't have any problems with the Armenian genocide. So they're very good at public relations. And now they admit that these are Armenians. Yes, even the tour guides would say, yes, this is an Armenian church, this is an Armenian Khatchkar, etc. Not only Armenian, but also Christians, because there are others like Greeks and Russian Orthodox also have left a few things, in Kars, for example. Yes?
Are there any signatures on these Khatchkars, so you know that Kirill built this one or George built that one?
Yes, that's a very good question. Some master carvers had their names on it, like Mkhitar, different names reappear from time to time. Yes, some Khatchkars have the names of the artist. Yes, the carver. That's why in the thank you I say I bow in front of all those Khatchkar masters who have built these Khatchkars. Because they inspired me to prepare this book. So there are master carvers. Yes.
I have a question. I've seen in a book, of course, there's a myth that Mamigonians were originally Chinese, came in 150 AD and assimilated. And there's a Khatchkar that has more Mongolic or Chinese.
Yes.
Have you seen any of that, or is that in the book? I've seen it in the books in the library, and I don't know how true it is.
Yeah, I showed a few images where you have Mongol,
Yeah.
Christ, and even with a different hairdo Christ, so that they can adapt with whoever was ruling Armenia in that period of time. Because if they didn't, probably they would not allow them to create those masterpieces. Yes?
The only other Christian tradition that has stone crosses, together with the Armenians, Celtic.
Yes, I've heard that before, yes.
Do you think there are any links?
I don't know. It's not my field of expertise, and I haven't gone and see them, so I cannot give my opinion about, or I don't have an answer for that question. I should go first, visit, and then see the difference.
What stone is indigenous to Armenia that they were made from?
It all depends from the region. Some regions have tufa, T-U-F, tuf. Some have basalt, some have, well, they used all kinds of rocks that they could find in the region. Yes, so it's not one type of rock that they used throughout all of Armenia. Like I showed in Astamar, for example, you don't have tufa, so you have to use the rock which is there.
Do you know how long it takes to do one Khatchkar? I mean, approximately, have you an idea?
How long?
If they start carving, yes.
It all depends how ornate and what kind of, what type of cross what type of rock they're chiseling, and what kind of barbet is.
And how long it took you to publish this book?
24 years. Yeah.
Any particular era maybe astonished you the most? That any particular era of Khatchkars astonished?
Yes, between 10th and 13th century is the best Khatchkars that we have seen. Yes, and most of them that you saw from Goshavang, from Hakhpat, from Sanahin, and those are detailed Khatchkars that we call them needlework, as if they are done by needles.
Do you know if in Armenia the new generation are taught to carve?
Yes, they are starting now to carve. Yes, which is good. And we need to have more barbets, actually. We are very talented people. We should restart going after our heritage. All right, thank you very much.
We do have the books available, so we have a treasure to keep. Thank you.